This is another episode of the Renegade Podcast. And this is a special one because we're talking to the one and only Kate Alexandra. She's a video essayist, talks about, history and literature and how those relate to sort of modern times we're in and everything between. She's a brilliant YouTuber, one of my favorites the last year or so. And man, this has been a long time in the making. And we're off in 3, 2, 1. Hello. Hello.
Hey there, how you doing?
I'm good, man. How you doing?
Awesome, I'm doing great. Lovely to talk to you. I'm really excited about this.
Yeah, man, me too, man. I've been waiting for a minute, bro. I'm waiting, man. I remember I first emailed you about this, and you said you were busy. Now we're off and running, man.
It's been a while. Yeah. No, a long time coming, so it's very exciting.
Sure. My first question to you is, what was the inspiration behind your channel name and logo?
I wish I had a good sort of interesting answer for this. The logo is it's a painting by an artist called Ron Hicks, who I'm obsessed with. He does these gorgeous kind of impressionistic paintings. I'm a painter, and he's just been my artistic inspiration for so many years. So it was just one particular painting that I'd always loved. So when I was trying to pick a profile picture, I was like, well, can't really do any better than him. And then the channel name, I think it was just what my email was set as, so I just used that. So very uncreative, but that's where that came from.
Interesting. It's funny you mentioned that because I thought the painting was like a rendition of yourself. I don't know why I thought that, but I did.
I wish it was.
Okay. All right. Okay. So it's been a minute since you made a video. I know you did a video about Harry Potter a couple months ago, but are you working on a new video?
I am. I'm sort of. It's terrible. I wish I was a more kind of regular video maker, but I take a very, very long time on videos. Particularly the scripting process. I think I'm quite a slow researcher, and I like to be quite kind of methodical. I don't use AI or anything like that. I kind of just really take my time. And I have a project. I hit the point with my channel where I was like, I've got a few videos up. I've got a bunch of subscribers. I really love, instead of kind of putting out more regular, easier to make content, I'd love to kind of up the quality and make some slightly more ambitious ones. Yeah. So I've got a couple in mind at the moment that are just so research intensive. I'm kind of talking to all sorts of people. I was trying to get some interviews for one. I don't know how that's going to go, but it's just, I'm so slow at this. So hopefully there'll be some content up soon, but I'm kind of, I hit a point where I opted to really take my time and go quite slowly instead of doing the more typical YouTube thing, which is to try and keep to a schedule and put up lots of content.
Interesting. That's a really interesting answer, because the one video I think really got my attention was practically your first video or your second video. Do you remember that you did on the channel?
Would this be the first Greek mythology one?
Yeah, that one really caught my attention. And I was just asking, I was just wondering, what was the kind of background around that video, and why did you sort of kind of, again, it's kind of a two-part question where, what inspired you to make a YouTube channel? Were you trying to sort of, mimic or maybe even imitate sort of YouTubers you watch or media content creators you've been watching for, before you started the channel?
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's real interesting. Okay. Honestly, I think I started my channel maybe end of high school, a wee while ago, and I was making room decorating content. I was making junk journal videos. Okay. It was completely unrelated to what I make now, and I wasn't doing them seriously at all. I just I enjoyed editing little videos together, and I didn't have any kind of aspirations to be a YouTuber. But I mean, I think like a lot of, teenagers in the 2010s, I loved video essays, and I have a lot of love for YouTube as a platform. I think I genuinely do feel like I got a really good education in all sorts of things just by watching YouTube videos as a teenager. I don't think I would have got into filmmaking if I hadn't watched a bunch of really interesting behind the scenes filmmaking channels or media analysis channels as a teen, or art, or so many things. So I always liked YouTube as a platform, and I guess I vaguely, I'd watch a video essay and I could be like, oh, I could do that. Okay. But no, that Greek myth video particularly, again, I had this channel, I had maybe 300 subscribers, didn't have any plans to be a YouTuber. I wrote that video, I think I kind of wrote it as an essay, just for my own entertainment. It was something that had been on my mind a bit. I was sort of midway through the year, I was kind of on holiday. I was like, I should put this on YouTube. I edited it quite roughly. It's not super well put together, to be honest.
Okay.
And then just chucked it up on my channel. And I'd say within a week, it was at maybe 20,000 views. It just suddenly, from nowhere, it just got a whole lot of views, which was really kind of frightening.
Interesting. Your most popular video as of right now is I think the Harry Potter video you dropped a couple months ago. Was that something you always wanted to do, or was that something that sort of came up in the moment? Because J.K. Rowling seems like she's in the news for all the wrong reasons the last couple of years. So
she is. No, that was probably the least planned one of any of the videos I've made, to be honest. And I wouldn't typically make something on a kind of, I don't know, like a really, try and jump on a hot trending topic or anything. Although I guess in the case of Harry Potter, it's sort of, it's always going to be hot and trending. So there's not an expiry on that one. But no, I'd been reading a few interesting books, not Harry Potter, but just sort of that had me thinking about world building and how you can sort of construct world building to different levels of kind of depth or complexity. I'd read some interesting essays as well. So it was kind of, bouncing around in my head, this idea. And I wrote an essay that I put on Patreon, and I was sort of like, oh, I think I could turn this into a video. I kind of tried, and I think I only made it because I was like, there are so many Harry Potter hot takes. Everyone's got their opinion on the books and the world and J.K. Rowling. And I only really wanted to make a video if I thought I could genuinely say something that no one else was pointing out, or if I could like find a way to say something original about a topic that everyone else has talked about.
Yeah.
Which is maybe a bit ambitious, but I think I hope I did that.
Wow, that is interesting. Something, it's funny because I think when I watched the video, right, I watched the full thing in one go, which is, again, rare for me because, videos like that, I have to, like, take a couple hours out of my days just to,
have them on in the background. Yeah.
Yeah. And one thing that really struck me was, again, like, I always say, like, your attention to detail about these topics. Because these topics are, like, they're, like, sensitive topics, man. They're, like, if you say one wrong thing, you're going to have a bunch of people going after you. But you weave it in a way that's sort of like, again, you're kind of telling a story within a story, which I really, again, it also goes back to what you're talking about with Greek literature and all that stuff in your earlier videos, right? I feel like you're kind of telling this story about a story, and I think that's really ingenious in my opinion. So,
thank you so much. I'm so grateful. I'm so glad that you enjoyed the videos. Yeah, you're totally right as well. That they're long, and I guess that goes for any video essay. It's like that we, especially currently in the past few years, we live in the internet's just completely short form content oriented. So asking people to sit down and watch a half hour or hour video essay is quite an ask.
Yeah.
Especially with my ones that aren't super intensely edited, or there's not like a lot to look at. You're just really hoping that people stick around and stay for the argument. So I'm super glad to hear that.
Yeah, wow, it's interesting. You mentioned that you had a earlier YouTube channel back in high school. what lessons did you take from that and you try to sort of apply to your current channel, or did you just say, you know what, this new channel I'm doing, it's like I'm going to just completely just start over, fresh slate?
Gosh, so the channel that I began, it was either in high school or right after high school, I don't quite remember. It's actually the same channel, except as soon as that first video essay started blowing up, I just immediately got scared and took down everything else on the channel. Okay. I was like, I always don't, well, I guess partly I was like, all these people are pouring in and subscribing for video essays. I don't really want to have all these sort of dinky little, I don't know, scrapbook flip-throughs or whatever, sketchbook tours or whatever was on my channel before. But no, honestly, I mean, I've been running the channel in such a kind of unserious way that I can't even think of what kind of viewer numbers I would have been pulling in. Maybe if I got really lucky, a video might get like 1,000 views, but they were all like very, very small. I did have a few lovely subscribers who would like comment on particular videos, but no, it was so, I feel like the channel went through such an abrupt switch after that first video essay that there's almost nothing that I could really take from my early experience beyond just kind of have fun, and I still treat it that way. I'm still treat this channel as a form of creative expression.
Are you still in are you still doing education, or you been out of that for a while?
I am finished, so I'm sort of through uni. In a way, actually, I think the channel started taking off. I think the year after I'd finished university, so it was kind of nice in a way. It was like because I love research and studying and all that kind of stuff, but obviously outside of academia, there's not much point to it. Whereas when you're making video essays, it's suddenly like, oh, I'm back on JSTOR and back reading all these academic articles and so on. So the timing was quite nice in a way to tide me into back into academia, but on my own terms and my own time.
Interesting. So my next question is that like you said, it takes a while to make your videos, but like how long does it specifically take to make a video on your channel? Like, or what do we, couple days, couple weeks? How does it work? How does a breakdown work?
Oh, months. Yeah, it's a while.
Okay.
Again, I'm so slow. There will be ways to speed things up. I'm sure especially if I pulled in other people to help me, I could speed it up a lot. But I draft videos quite slowly. I think that takes the longest period. I tend to like to do a bit of reading. If I can sort of find a book or a few articles on like an adjacent topic and give that a read while I'm researching, I quite like that. It just kind of keeps me tapped into the research process. Okay. And then editing, because I think a lot of video essayists choose to be on camera, and that just honestly speeds up the process a whole lot, because it's like, well, cool, you've got the footage and the audio, and you just need to, add a few cutaways or some relevant visual things. Whereas for me, I like to build the video from the ground up, so I need to, create visuals for the whole way through, which just takes a whole lot longer. Unless I do something like the Harry Potter video where I just decided to make it more quickly and like filmed some candles.
Okay. Interesting. It's just that you mentioned that, people showing their face, and obviously, I mean, I don't know if you showed your face in your earlier videos, but like, will you ever do a face reveal at some point? You reach like 100K or 200K or something like that? Or are you just going to just be like, let the content speak for itself type of thing?
Being anonymous. Gosh, I've kind of been thinking about that, and I really don't have much of an answer. I'm like, possibly. I think I am interested in leaning more into documentary style stuff. I have a bit of a background in filmmaking, and I love sort of making doco style stuff. And if you do something like that, you kind of need to be on camera. So maybe if there was a particular subscriber milestone, I would make a doco style thing and then be on camera. Okay. But I do honestly, I like the anonymity. I enjoy also just, I don't know, no one in my life, or not many people in my life knowing I have a YouTube channel. There's like a nice separation between my life and then YouTube. There's something, I think there is something quite nice about anonymity that you can't necessarily get back if you do a face reveal or anything.
Okay, interesting. Have you ever been like mistaken for someone else out in the real world? Like, hey, you look like this, or you look like that, or you never gotten that?
No, I wish I had like a celebrity doppelganger. That'd be so cool. And I have friends who have, you know, random doppelgangers, and it's, I don't know. I'd love that to be the case, but no, not really, to be honest. No, I wish I did.
Interesting. So is YouTube, is that like your primary job, or is this like a side hobby type of thing?
Oh, this year I've been doing a lot of freelance stuff, so it actually has been a fairly decent source of income, which has been super nice. But I'm not taking it super seriously to the point that I would need to start thinking about, you know, brand deals or, you know, monthly content uploads. I have a Patreon, and that's really kind of helpful for just bringing in something a bit more regular. And also I do have a schedule for that one, so that's good at sort of keeping me to commitments. But I think I'd be really interested in doing it full time. I would just need to find some sort of way to speed up my process, because I can't at the moment. It's so unsustainable to kind of do videos to the I don't know, to the level of like detail that I've been doing them. I mean, to also like find a way to pump out, you know, a video a month. I definitely need to bring some people on board.
Interesting. So again, you know, you grew up in New Zealand, and how does that sort of, you know, how was that like, you know, growing up in New Zealand on the other side of the world? You know, how was sort of the education you got, and how was sort of like, how does that affect the content that you make, or does it even affect it at all?
I guess one difference being that, well, you know, I don't know if this is necessarily the case for, you know, Northern Hemisphere countries, but, you know, no one here really has much of an online presence or a YouTube channel, or, you know, anything in a big way. I don't know any influencers. I don't know any YouTubers or anyone who has an interest in having a YouTube channel. It's just sort of not something anyone I know does. But yeah, I don't know. Living in New Zealand, it's certainly, because again, I'm kind of interested in you know, film, entertainment industry, that side of things. And it's very, very, you know, well-resourced, I think, for a small country, but small. Everyone knows each other. It's, you know, it's a tight-knit community. So if you get a foot in the door, you're immediately in the entertainment industry. And if you can't, you know, get contacts, you're just permanently stuck on the outside. So even for this YouTube channel, I've been, you know, talking to people about whether I could get, you know, funding for stuff, you know, bring other people on board through more like kind of traditional means of, you know, film industry contacts and so on. And, you know, there's just nothing set up. It's like no one here does like YouTube or content creation as a job. So you're definitely, yeah, I feel like it can be a little lonely in that respect, maybe. But then, you know, I don't know if I assume other countries, it's not like you necessarily know a whole bunch of YouTubers just because you're from, you know, Canada or the US or something.
You know, it's interesting when you mentioned that, because like in Canada, it's kind of like, how can I say this? Like, obviously Canada has always been a melting pot, no matter what, you know, other people that shall not be named love to say all the time on social media. But the only thing I would say to what you're saying is that I think, you know, it's kind of like, it's especially now, I feel like, you know, it feels like it keeps going faster and faster every single year. I mean, it's crazy. Like, you know, in one moment, you know, it's the 1st of January, you know, New Year's Day. Now we're mid-September, right? Before, it felt like, not to me, but, you know, people have said before, it felt like there was a gradual, you know, time that's passing type of thing. But specifically for the film industry, right? The film industry is more international than ever, right? And that was always inevitable. But it kind of feels like it's like become more exclusive in a way that, like, you know, you can't just, you know, obviously, you know, all the top players, you know, in the game, like they all, you know, they all had connections and stuff, and I get that. But the thing I find very interesting is that it really has become like, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And look, I'm fine with that if you're like good at what you do. But the other side of that is that now it's like, if you don't have sort of a kind of a cheat card or cheat code to the top, then it's kind of like you're on the outside. You have to you're kind of like, you're a spectator, you know, and you might have more talent or more ability than the guys that are playing, you know. And it's kind of similar in other. Do you watch sports?
A little bit.
Like what type?
Rugby.
Okay, rugby. Okay, that's perfect.
As with any New Zealander.
Okay, that's a perfect example, actually, because rugby, you know, like when it started out, was more like, it's more game of the people, right? It wasn't as elitist as, let's say, something like soccer or football or anything like that. Rugby was really about the love of the game. And obviously over time, you know, rugby's become a very popular sport. You know, hundreds of millions of people, they play the sport all the time, you know, and all that stuff. It's become sort of the same thing where, like, a lot of the top guys, you know, you gotta, you gotta realize, like, these rugby guys are, like, they are big, right? You can't be small and play rugby, you know what I'm saying? Like, you have to be a particular type of size, weight class, and all that stuff. And you can relate that back to the sort of film industry, where it feels like there's kind of a silent Cold War going on, you know, and it's always been there, but it really feels like there's people who are sort of walking that tightrope between, you know, profitability and artistry, you know. And I always find that very interesting. We see directors, you know, again, I look at Christopher Nolan, I look at, you know, I look at Spielberg and Scorsese and Tarantino. They always find that balance. Even Kubrick, to an extent, they found that balance where they're culturally relevant, but they're artistic enough not to be dismissed, right? And, you know, it feels like those lines have now become more blurred because of the internet, but I would like to see what's your take on that.
That's so interesting. Absolutely. In fact, that's something that's been on my mind a bit. It's like, especially with those, you know, directors like Scorsese and Kubrick and so on, that you've got this thing of kind of being on the outside and being avant-garde and yet also being at the absolute heart of the film industry and pushing what film can do. And I think currently, from what I hear, it's, for instance, like, it's so hard to get a TV show traditionally made, funded. Getting funding for films, you know, the mid-budget film is really dying. You either get, you know, mega bucks for a blockbuster, or you're working on an absolute, you know, tiny budget trying to make an indie film. But yeah, there's an interesting push and pull between. I think there are benefits to being an outsider and to working with new media. In fact, in a way, YouTube's the perfect example. You know, it's totally, it's massively profitable. People can make, you know, a pretty comfortable living on it. If you're, you know, say like a content creator with a family, you can actually support a family with it.
Yeah.
It's completely kind of untapped by the more traditional media. Again, you know, like for me, you know, approaching, you know, people in traditional media and talking about my YouTube channel, they have no idea about YouTube. They just think it's a hobby. It's not something serious that's a job. But in a way, you know, your viewership numbers are much more legitimate and often higher than cable TV or you know, the 7 o'clock news or something. You can be pulling in much bigger numbers on a personal YouTube channel than, you know, your average highly funded, like, local TV show might be pulling in. So you've got this weird divide where there's kind of modern, like, sort of modern current avenues of particularly internet-oriented media that are much more successful than pulling in viewership than old media, but they're given much less respect, much less funding, much less opportunities. So you can have a huge audience, and you know, then there's kind of nothing you can do with it in a way.
Yeah.
I wonder, you know, with sports or something, you know, like, I guess an interesting equivalent might be something like F1, where, you know, they have that really successful Netflix show, and suddenly they've just been pulling in this massive audience of casual Netflix viewers who get really invested in the sport suddenly. That, you know, they've found a way to bridge this this divide and sort of pull in a whole lot of new viewers by kind of tapping into a Netflix audience. There's so much. I feel like the kind of gatekeepers of traditional media are always like 5 or 6 years behind whatever else is happening. So I'd be interested to see how things evolve, but whether the internet offers more of a new frontier for how like media and film and TV and sports and so on gets made, or whether it just always is kind of compartmentalized.
That's a great answer. The thing, with F1, it's funny because my brother has gotten more and more into it, even though he was never interested in that. Besides, and I'll say this, you must have heard of Top Gear.
Oh, yes. Yes.
I would argue, this is just a hot take, and there's going to be a lot of hot takes on this interview, but probably my biggest hot take is that Top Gear might be the most influential show for popular culture, like, period. And I'm not just talking about cars, because that's definitely the answer for cars and stuff. But for overall culture, the amount of memes I saw about Top Gear, even, you must have heard, the whole, like, Charlie Kirk situation, right?
Oh, yes.
Okay. The amount of memes about Jeremy Clarkson saying, I don't know if I could say it, but it's like, it's surreal, and also it kind of proves the show's like brilliance, because again, you could be obsessed, you could be like a nerd, you could be like a nerd of like cars and the engines and the material and all that stuff, and you love the show. But if you're just a casual like I was when I was younger, right? Like I attribute that show for me still loving cars and the way that cars in and of itself is an art form. I always feel like vehicles are art to me, right? Because the way it's made, the way it's presented, it's kind of like a movie. It's kind of like a TV show, right? Sure, cars come out more frequently, right? And they come out in a different way. But they're kind of, I look at, for example, the one car that really took me away. This is when I was younger. I'll always say this. The McLaren F1 revolutionized artistic design. Right. Because here's the funny story, right? My dad, he rode in McLaren F1. I think it was like 2012 or something like that. Right? And he told me like the way that the vehicle engine roared was like unlike anything I ever seen. My dad was my dad's father. He ran a car dealership. I think it was hot, right? Back in the day. And he obviously as a kid, he would obviously, visit, my dad would visit his dad, and, you sit in these cars and stuff. And my dad's been in a ton of cars, what I'm saying? Lamborghini, Ferrari, Aston Martin, right? Like every type of car, Audi. Like, it's so funny because we used to have an Audi for like the longest time. And I used to think, like, there's no car for that type of price will feel the way that it does, right? You know what I'm saying? It was like, I think we had like the A4. I think it was the Audi A4. It was a brown car, brown Audi. And the funniest thing is, I've seen a lot of Audi. I see a lot of supercars. But I've not seen a single brown Audi A4 for years now. And I think the last time I saw it was like I was living in Brampton. It was like over a decade ago, right? And I think, and you could also, we can, again, so back to Top Gear, is that the way that they balance the comedic aspect of it, the banter of it, the knowledge of it, because those three guys, they're like scholars of cars. Right? Yeah. They're like Socrates. They're like the guy. They're like the person you go to, you want to learn about something new that you haven't really thought of in cars. And I would also say, like, there have been certain car magazines, that exploded, right? And now you have F1 sort of exploding in popularity, and you see guys like, again, there's always been F1 drivers that were massively popular. I look at somebody like Michael Schumacher, right? He changed the game for like to me he's still the GOAT, like F1 guy, like period, right? Lewis Hamilton, he took that to the next level, right? And you have other guys too, that also, again, I granted, I'm not like an F1 scholar, but I'll never forget this. I was in a class, I think it was for like philosophy or something like that. I was I think it was at Humber,
Nice.
Polytechnic. It was up in Etobicoke, Ontario, and I sat beside this woman, right? And because the funny thing was there was like this little break in class. Every class we had this 10-15 minute break, right? And I just struck up a conversation with this person. And I said, what are you into? I said, I'm into F1. I'm like, wait, what? F1? I'm like, because she didn't look like a person that be in F1. Granted, like, I don't know what an F1 fan really means, like, aesthetically speaking. But the way that the amount of passion she had, it kind of took me aback. And I realized, like the way that, F1 and cars in general, motor vehicles in general, are marketed, I feel like that's the blueprint, right? You know what I'm saying? Sure, you can up the drama, you can up the soap opera aspect of it, because F1 is a soap opera on wheels, right?
Oh, like, yeah, time it's just a bunch of celebrities, it's it's just made for TV.
Right? And, sure, for some people it's like, these guys are driving in laps for like 10, 20 hours, how is this entertaining? I'm like, that's not the point. The whole season is like a movie. The whole season is like, it's kind of like the WWE, but it's obviously it's not scripted, right? Guys are crashing almost every race, it feels like, and there is that sort of kind of comic book aspect of it where you see the evolution of someone over a season, right? You know what I'm saying? Right? Somebody could start at the bottom, could hypothetically go to the top like that. Right? In other sports, that usually doesn't happen that quickly. Right? Sure, there's been teams that, I mean, Leicester City is probably the best example. They almost got relegated and won a title. But that, again, we see those type of stories in racing a lot more. Because, again, I would argue that the stakes are so much higher. And yet, the margins are... Like, a driver can play with his margins. You know what I'm saying? Because you can't... Because, again, I think every driver can attest to this, even the ones who aren't in F1. Like, you kind of control your destiny on the road most of the time, right? Some people love to, again, be on the edge, but some people like to just stay safe. In F1, you can't do that. You can't stay safe. If you stay safe, you're going to be last every single time. You got to take a risk. You got to take a turn. You got to speed up. You got to slow down. And there are going to be points where, there's going to be that sort of, like that moment, you know what I'm saying? It's like a half a millisecond moment where if you don't turn at that particular moment, at that particular time, you're going to lose the race and your eggs will be on your face. But if you do make the turn, you do make that overtake, right? Then you're the hero. You're like, again, you're like, you know what I'm saying? Like everybody shouts you praise, right? So it's, again, like, it's like that saying where that movie, I think, what's it called? It's a football movie, sorry, Al Pacino, but he said, like, life is a game of inches, and I think F1 is, like, the best example of that, I think, currently.
Yeah, just ebb and bends, and as you said, it's narrative, It's like people root for the people, or for the driver with the great story, or the team with the great story, It's like, I don't know, McLaren's a favorite this year, partly because they've got an incredible comeback story, and or you'll get a particular driver who just has some amazing meteoric rise, or some incredible years long reign at the top, like Hamilton or someone, or you'll just get these incredible stories. And I think for anyone managing a team of any sport, could be rugby, football, whatever it might be, it's like tapping into what your team's story is. Kind of makes me think back to weirdly, like Star Wars and like 80s franchising. It was when they realized that, like, oh, you can make a movie, you can make a blockbuster, but if you really, really want to be profitable and make it part of the culture, you make a franchise. You find ways to make it more than a movie. You find ways to make it a line of toys and a TV show and novelizations and I don't know, special like fast food like meals or something. And it's almost the same with sport, it has to be more than a game, or it has to be more than a race. It needs to be a story and the players and, some kind of amazing narrative arc. This goes for everything, growing up, like watching a bunch of rugby, you'd always know, what kind of local teams have got some like super cool comeback story, or have just like brought in a new international coach and they're going to do amazingly this year, and you're really rooting for them. And it's got to, I know franchise is the wrong word to use for sport, but it almost feels like that. It's the really successful ones find a way to go beyond just the one game or the one patch.
It's funny you say that, because I mean, like, did you watch the new Fantastic Four movie?
Oh, I haven't.
Okay. What was the last time you watched an MCU movie, like in theaters?
Oh, sorry.
What was the last time you watched like an MCU movie in theaters?
MCU. Oh my gosh. Genuinely, probably Far From Home. It's been so long.
Okay, that's actually a good starting point, because I feel like you can love them or hate them or anything like that. I really feel like the way that people talk about the MCU and the way that people want them to fail, it feels like there's a group. It feels like there's I don't know, maybe it's a loud minority of people, want this franchise, especially the last couple of years, to like burn to the ground. And I'm like, why? Right? Just because they made a bad movie does not mean a franchise has to, again, be uprooted. Now, I understand, because these complaints has always been there about them since the beginning, too. That's what people forget. People like to act like Phase 1 to Phase 3 was, again, all of them were 10 out of 10. It's like, no, they were not. Right? No, they were not. I would argue their hit rate is a lot like the current MCU's hit rate. It's just that, again, those people were just riding on the hype of the MCU when it was, again, kind of culturally acceptable to, again, duck on DC and love Marvel. Now it's kind of flipped, right? It's cool to dunk on Marvel and love DC. It's so funny. It's like, I mean, I would argue, right? I love Superman. Did you watch Superman?
Yeah, and I haven't. I've been really bad at seeing superhero films recently, but I've heard a lot about it.
Okay, right? Again, the amount of commotion, the amount of positive commotion about Superman is a lot like the commotion about Spider-Man No Way Home. Far From Home, or whatever third movie was. And I thought, okay, you guys, again, it's a lot like the Patriots with Tom. You ever heard of Tom Brady?
Yes.
Okay. It's a lot like the Tom Brady Patriots, where, again, in their minds, they know, okay, he's going to find a way to win the game, but I want him to lose. Right? It's like that. But I think the difference is that I think, at least in sports, if you're winning consistently, I think people will be like, okay, this guy's the best. But in movies, it feels like it's like the opposite, Because granted, there's certain aspects of it that are out of your control, right? There's a lot of great movies that have flopped in the box office, and there's been movies that have been really successful, but nobody is like saying these movies are like the pinnacle of cinema, right? I look at the Venom movies, more specifically the first Venom. I remember the marketing campaign. I was so convinced that Tom Holland's Spider-Man was going to show up, or a Spider-Man was going to show up, and I wanted to watch the movie in theaters. This was the time where, like, any superhero movie that was I want to watch it, right? And I looked at that time period, right? And granted, I enjoyed Venom when it came out, and I still do to an extent, but it's really funny how the mind could kind of like trick you into something that you kind of don't believe in, right? And these people that have been wanting superhero movies to die out, or just any type of movie, or any type of person to go away forever, or something like that, I feel like quite a few of them don't really believe in what they say. And I specifically, again, I'm always going to bring her up, because I feel like I bring her name up in every podcast I do. Have you heard of Millie Bobby Brown?
Yes.
Okay. So, again, I always say this. Millie Bobby Brown is probably maybe the best example of, again, how the internet could turn on someone, even though this person has done nothing, really, comparatively to what the internet likes, comparatively, right? Like, so when Stranger Things came out, everybody loved her. every interview, everybody was laughing and giggling at her jokes, and everybody's like, she's going to be like one of the best, right? And, you know, time goes on, people still believe that, but it was little less. And then I think a shift happened. More specifically, I think what happened was actually, funny enough, it's 2019. And I think that's when I start noticing there's these compilations of her being quote-unquote rude or stuck up or being a diva or whatever, or a narcissist, whatever, in these interviews. And the comments are just been hammering her. Right? There's one video about a YouTuber. I really love this person's content. But man, this person made such a baffling video. I think. Have you heard of Honest? He's like this sort of music.
Oh, yes, I have.
Huh?
Yeah. It's a guy. Yeah.
Okay. He made a video about Millie, okay? And he said, why? He says, I don't know what. The title was very blunt. Like, reason why no one likes Millie Bobby Brown. And I'm like, I watched it. I'm like, what is this person talking about? Like, a lot of the points he was making, I felt like he was rage baiting. It was like probably the early example of rage bait before the term's actually being used. And this was like back in 2018 or something like that. Now it's, 2018 feels like a decade ago. But the point I'm trying to make is that if people's first impressions with someone is often their last. And sure, and for some people, she can like repeat at the Oscars. She can become like the GOAT at like acting. They're still gonna say she sucks because of this or that. They're gonna again nitpick minute details, and she's not the only one. Like Brie Larson has been going through this for a while. Yes. Rachel Zegler, especially Rachel Zegler. Again, Anne Hathaway dealt with. All these people have dealt with this, right? It's just, internet likes to again pretend they like to backtrack and say, man, we love you, but when they were disrespecting you and people were like pushing back, they say, you know what, this is the game. You're gonna have to deal with it. But if you do it to people that they like, for example, somebody made and granted, I love Keanu Reeves, but somebody made are you on Reddit?
Not much, but
okay.
Again, sort of familiar.
So there's a subreddit called Unpopular Opinion, and as you know, you hear that, it's okay, you're gonna get a lot of uninformed opinions. But this person made a very interesting essay about Keanu Reeves, and he said, you know what, man, he's a great guy. I like the John Wick movies, but he's not a good actor. Here's why. And the guy laid it all out. It was a couple years ago, and it was a great essay. I think I uploaded it or some shit. All the comments were they were just cracking jokes at the guy's expense and say, what is he talking about? He's so wholesome. Yeah, it's like, no, he was trying to say, no, I'm not talking about him as a person. I'm talking about him as an actor. Right? And look, and that's the thing, is that we sometimes forget, there's constructive criticism and there's personal attacks. And I think, with the rise of rage bait and the rise of, people just shit talking just to shit talk, it's now become blurred. And I want to know what's your sort of perspective of that, and how do you sort of, again, how do we not solve this, but how do we minimize it,
Oh, such an important point. Yeah, I think you really can't understate how much of it's just public entertainment, It's especially with someone like Rachel Zegler or Millie Bobby Brown, people, I think, maybe see a, confident young actress and who's, very self-assured and doing really well. There's maybe a bit of tall poppy syndrome at play as well. It's you want a reason to cut them down, and any flimsy excuse, no matter how stupid, becomes an absolute just reason to tear them to pieces. I doubt many of the people hating on Rachel Zegler had watched Snow White since they were kids or had any strong feelings about it. But and I imagine a lot of the people hating on Millie Bobby Brown had really enjoyed her performance in Stranger Things, But it becomes a kind of public spectacle where you don't want to feel like the bad guy for hating on this person. You don't want to feel like you're in the wrong. So you need to find some kind of moral excuse to criticize them and tear them down. And then it becomes its own kind of form of public entertainment. And on the flip side, you can get these really beloved celebrities and beloved people who, can do no wrong or can face no criticism, because I feel like we almost see kind of their justified criticism as someone kind of teeing up to take a shot at someone's personal life, you know? So people, you know, someone making a very genuine, like, balanced critique of Keanu Reeves' like acting style. I imagine a lot of those people on Reddit would have seen that critique not as it was meant, you know, as a critique of his acting, but as, you know, some kind of sit-up for tearing him down as a person. So, you know, they felt the need to come to his aim and defend him as a person instead of actually engaging with the argument, which was just purely a critique of his acting. I almost wonder when I guess Marvel movies and, you know, that Marvel DC battle, maybe there's a little of that at play as well. Of, you know, I feel like we just tie so much of our identity to what we like. You know, you are the media that you consume, or you are the films that you like, or, you know, if you're a Marvel fan, that becomes, you know, kind of a big part of your identity. So again, attacking a particular type of film or a particular comic book audience, whatever it is, isn't just about the film. It's about tearing down someone's identity.
Yeah, so that's a really interesting point you make, is that, you know, I always say, like, you know, someone made a very interesting comment that, I think, was it a comment? I think I heard this in a YouTube video, like a video essay about just, you know, culture in general. And one of the comments said that, again, you know, because back in the day, right, you know, back during the Middle Ages, which, again, a lot of your content's kind of, you know, sort of speaking about that time period, the main gatekeeper of that time was the Catholic Church. They controlled everything. Like, everything. It's actually crazy. You know, it's so funny people talk about deep state. They was the deep state. They was the Illuminati of that time. Right? And it's not a shot against any, like, religious person. I don't know, like, do you follow religion, or?
No, I don't.
Okay. So, again, like, they controlled everything. There's been so many stories, you know, like someone like Galileo was put in prison just because he said, you know, the universe does not circle the earth. The earth circles the sun, which then circles, again, our galaxy, you know, it circles the Milky Way. And again, it's like, and they thought it was blasphemy. Right? It's absurd, right? And there was no technology during that time like we have now. He made a educated guess, and he got thrown in prison. And people don't understand. Like, again, we're kind of getting back to that now. You know, like, again, like, I've been seeing so many tweets about, we gotta throw all the leftists in prison. We gotta kill all of them. Like, and I'm just like, what? Again, the lack of self-awareness is so insane. And again, you know, the thing about that sort of time period, is that the Renaissance era was kind of like, that was when they said, you know what, enough's enough. We want to create our own thing, so without any judgment or impurity, anything like that, right? And then the Catholic Church, it's not a coincidence that they start to lose influence. Their empires, for example, right? They all started to disintegrate before the 20th century, right? Remember, like, again, the Constantinople Empire was, at the time, the biggest empire on Earth. And now it's not, it's like, you know, people still talk about it and study about it and all that stuff. But, again, those things don't control the narrative now. Now the Catholic Church is just a kind of a religious symbol now. Instead of being an autocracy like it was back in the day, right? And the interesting thing that I find with that time period, I find so fascinating, is that, you know, I look at when the Roman Empire, right? Because there's all these memes about, like, this is my Roman Empire, this person was my Roman Empire, all that silliness, right?
Roman Empire. Yeah.
On TikTok, right? People, like, I don't know how people forget this, but the Roman Empire did not fall because of immigration or multiculturalism or anything like that. Any of the stupid, statue Twitter accounts love to say. All of them are white supremacists, by the way. And it's because the rulers at the time forgot what they were set out to do in the beginning. You're supposed to serve the people. But the way of their governance was all about aesthetic, all about an image, than actually serving their people. Again, a lot of the people that were not rich or close to being rich during that time, they were in poverty, right? You see all these paintings of these grand cathedrals, these grand coliseums, right? People used to just assume that anybody could come. No, that's not how it worked, right? Look at how, I look at how the event of, again, Attila the Hun, right? People, use Attila the Hun as this is when all hell breaks loose. I would say no. This is when the empire last sort of brass was extinguished. Because when he came in there, right, and he ransacked him and his whole army, they ransacked that place. Because can you imagine, you told someone during the peak of the Roman Empire, they literally almost conquered the entire earth, besides like North America, South America, right? That a guy from Mongolia, that sort of that area, him and his ragtag team of, again, mercenaries and all killers and all that stuff will go into Rome and lay down his flag. Like it's like his joint to own. Like he owned the whole thing. Like they'll think you're crazy. But they, again, the moral decay of that time period happened to the Catholic Church. It is now happening to, I would argue, America. They're going through the same exact thing, right? And it's no shock that it's no shock that the person who's leading the U.S., right, is Donald Trump. It's not a shock. Because the people who was leading the Roman Empire were a lot like Trump. They were narcissistic, selfish, I would argue sadistic people. And I think if you were a politician, I feel that you kind of have to be kind of crazy to be a politician. But those people take it to the next level, right? So, again, I hope, that the U.S. doesn't fall, like, the whole thing doesn't fall. Because if it falls, like, I think up here, up north, we're done. We depend on them. Like, people don't like hearing them, but we kind of depend on them. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, and sure, we can self-sustain ourselves. But if again, because you gotta look at the whole sort of world in general, right? Like, it doesn't have to be like an Attila the Hun type of figure. Because those figures, again, those figures don't exist anymore. Now they're countries. Now they're intelligence agencies. Now they're bots, right? I look at, again, it's so interesting, about the whole, like, Charlie Kirk situation, was that he was talking about gun violence and he was killed by a gun. You know what I'm saying? And that's the morbid poeticness of life, where, there's always, people talk about, your words always come back to you. I mean, that's a pretty interesting case of that happening. And look, I hope that, because I don't think no kid should see their, no kid should see their father die like that. I'm not, but the rhetoric he was spreading, because I'm brown. I don't know if you knew that, but I'm brown. I'm Pakistani. And I'm assuming you're white. I'm assuming, right? Huh? Yeah?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how he was sort of, again, like, preying on the insecurities. And he was not the only one, right? I would argue there's one guy that really started doing that. It's the 20th century. It was Alex Jones and David Icke. Those people did the same thing Charlie Kirk did. It's just that their agenda was more... was more, like, sort of conspiratorial, fanatical,
Yeah.
And those same people also like Charlie Kirk for the same reason. It's just that he's connected to the administration, saying at the end he was like a mouthpiece for them, and that's not a shot per se, but I find it funny where conservatives up here and even down south talk about how the media is liberal biased, and I'm like, you guys own all these companies. They own all these companies. So again, it's like, and then I realize like those people don't care about, they care about power. They care about because you control the narrative, you control everything, right? And they're realizing that every time they try to control the narrative, more and more people see the facade that's happening right in front of their eyes. So,
100%. Oh my gosh, no, that's so interesting. Gosh, there's so many interesting threads there. I guess that almost ties back to, at the beginning with the Catholic Church in Galileo, and I guess what's so interesting, particularly with that to me, is the distribution of information. Was ultimately inevitable. We were going to develop, but the more evidence about the Earth not being the center of the universe was presented to the Catholic Church, the more they dug their feet in. It's not like there's this linear idea of, you present the counter argument rationally to people. You say, no, this isn't the case. Here's the evidence. In most cases, it's like you I'm sure there's like a proper psychological term for this, but I guess in layman's terms, it's like the more you present the counter argument, the more people would dig their feet into the sand and say, no, this is, my opinion's correct. And I just also, I'm curious about the Canadian perspective towards the US, because obviously I'm very far away from the US, so a lot of this feels fairly distant. But I guess for you guys, it's sort of, it almost, you've got a weird situation where you're so closely tied to this country that you have no democratic say in, and yet so much of your own national security and your own politics are dictated by another country that you don't really have any sway over.
It's interesting you say that because, I use another, because I always feel like sports in its form, in its sort of truest form, it's just politics on the field. It really is, right? I mean, you have, and in turn, politics have turned into sports. Everybody's at their team, they're wearing their colors. It's kind of dystopian in a way. The way that politics has now just kind of become this kind of, again, politics has always been, has always been sort of the entertainment of, like, it used to be the entertainment of the rich. Now it's against plastered on every single TV in the whole world. It's so funny because as Canadian, right, like, you understand, like, we always been in the shadow of the U.S. We can always, like, puff our chest up and say, hey, we beat them in this sport, and we're so good in hockey, and maple syrup, and all that stuff, and that's great. And sure, and I would say, like, if somebody if for example, like, if you were to move out to, are you going to, like, move out of New Zealand anytime soon, or are you even thinking about that?
Potentially someday.
Okay.
Yeah.
My word of advice, like, come to Canada.
I hear they're quite similar in various ways, Canada and New Zealand.
Right. But let's be real here, right? Like, there's a reason the U.S. there's a reason why American exceptionalism has always existed in America. Mm-hmm. And it was not built on a lie. There was a time, and it wasn't that long ago, that the U.S. was the best country on planet Earth. Like, dude, they was killing everybody in the economy. They was whooping everybody's ass in sports. Again, I look at the score lines of the Olympics, and they still win a lot of the gold medals, but there's competition now, right? Back then, it was lights out. Summer, winter, it doesn't matter, right? Albums, movies, music, doesn't matter, right? Like, I can't imagine a movie like Parasite dropping back in the 80s or 90s. I don't think it would have had the reception it would have now. it would be like a more like obscure version of like in the mood of love or something like that. Forgot the name, but it's like when Parasite won Best Picture in 2019, I really think something shifted, right? If you were a nationalist, or you know what I'm saying, in America, and you paid attention to that, and you're like, we cannot allow that to happen ever again, right? I look at when Obama got elected, and he had two term. He was at one point, because I would argue, if the 2-term limit was not a thing, Obama would still be president, because he was that popular. He was that charismatic, even though, you know, implementation of his policies are like, they were a mixed bag, let's be real. But compared to Trump, he was like, compared to Trump, like anybody compared to Trump is like a saint. But especially him, he was like, again, compared to Trump, he was like the GOAT, right? So it's like, again, it's so interesting how, you know, you see like groups of people just decide on a whim that they're going to try to tear down everything just because the thing that they misunderstood when they were younger, right? Because I look at, you know, how people romanticize certain things, how people romanticize decades that they never lived in, right? It's so funny, you know. I had like a jazz phase, you know, back in the day. I used to listen to like Frank Sinatra. I still do, but like I used to listen to like Chet Baker and Miles Davis and John Coltrane. And those guys are brilliant. But in all these comment sections, I see people same age as me say, man, I would love to live in the 50s and 60s. I'm like, do you really? When segregation and civil rights was going on, like when people were getting lynched, right? That's those things were still happening then. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, and then you have this in the 80s warship, in the 90s. And look, I understand, right? We'd all love to think that the previous decade that we grew up in was the best decade ever, and I keep hearing like, man, 1999 was that year, 2016 was that year, all this nonsense, and I'm like, and then you wonder why fascism is a thing, because fascism preys on people's nostalgia and people's rose-tinted glasses. I always say like, nostalgia will inevitably turn into toxic nostalgia, which again will turn into down the road to fascism. That's how capitalism works. They sell you a product that reminds you of something of your past. And that's the thing people don't get. Right? You know what I'm saying? It's like when, have you read Calvin and Hobbes?
No.
Oh, so Calvin and Hobbes is a very, very popular comic strip up in, you know, North America and Europe, where it's about this kid named Calvin. And his pet tiger, who Calvin thinks is he's like this living, breathing thing, but it's not. But it's a metaphor for his other side of his personality. You know, that's how I interpret it. You know, Calvin's a troublemaker, but he's incredibly smart at a couple things, right? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, it's a very unique comic in general. Like, I think it's the greatest comic ever. Like, comic strip. It's the greatest ever because I feel like it's so biting in its critique. It's so philosophical in its reasoning. But yet, if you don't know any of these things, it's still one of the funniest things you will read. I think that's a video you should make in the future.
I'm gonna have to Google that now. I think I can visualize it. I definitely. As soon as you mentioned the tiger, I was like, oh yeah, that sounds familiar, but I've definitely never
read it. So the reason why I mentioned Calvin and Hobbes is that, you know, it's again, granted, you know, it kind of shows you that I don't know if it shows you. I don't think that's a great example. I look at something that really kind of shows you the sort of why nostalgia is ultimately, it's useful, but it's kind of unnecessary. You know, I think of a movie like Tenet. It's weird. It's a weird movie to put in this category, but Tenet kind of shows you that nostalgia is kind of like a self-destructing type of thing. Have you watched Tenet by Nolan?
Gosh, no, I haven't. I'm familiar with it, but I haven't seen it.
All right. So the end of the movie, you know what I'm saying? I'm going to spoil it. It's been 5 years, right? So...
Go ahead.
Alright, so, in the movie, right, they get this device, right? This device is essentially like the MacGuffin in the entire movie. This device is made up of 3 parts, right? And the whole movie is a temporal piercer, meaning like, it's kind of the definition, what comes around goes around type of thing, right? It's time travel, but not really, right? It's really like, it gets really like, kind of like, you know, sort of like screws in your mind type of thing. But the end of the movie, right, I think Robert Pattinson's character said that, I think one of the last lines of the movie, he said that this is the end of a beautiful friendship. And John David Washington's character said, but it's the start of mine. Because the way it works, in the opening scene of the movie, they do this siege, right, to tame this part of this time sort of destroying thing, right? And this person was wearing like a red or like an orange string on his back, because all of them were wearing like military, like SWAT team. But this guy was in full camo, and he had this red string, gets shot. He saves John David Washington's character. And that was Robert Pattinson's character. It was on the plane. It's kind of like a process. It's a cycle, right? Yeah. And him surviving that, because the way the movie sort of again warps time, you would think he would be the one who dies, right? Because the whole trope, right? You know what I'm saying? This whole sort of trope about, you know, a black character, they're usually the first ones to die in a horror movie. But Nolan reverses it. He's the one who survives. Pattinson's character dies. But he's the one who breaks the cycle. Right? He's the one who saves the world. Right? And the last line of that movie is so interesting. Not even the line. It was like, you know, because I watched it in theaters. I was in Germany. I was living in Germany with my family. We lived there for like a year in Berlin. That was a weird time. It was pandemic and all that stuff. But it was an interesting experience overall. And I rewatched Tenet the other day, and I realized something. I realized that Tenet was about nostalgia. Not nostalgia, but how fixating over past events will ultimately screw you over in the future, right? And there's nothing wrong in learning from your past. Nothing wrong with that. It's a healthy thing. You know what I'm saying? But if you're letting your present be dictated of an idealized version of your past, a time period that you didn't live in day to day, then ultimately in the future, you're just going to be a shell. And that's how I feel about romanticizing decades that you didn't live in. Right? I'm a person that looks forward. I don't want to look back. The past is the past. That's great and all that. That's why you have museums. You know what I'm saying? But I look forward, so.
Absolutely. Actually, as a tiny aside on that, because that really interests me. I feel like maybe that final line in Tenet is a reference to Casablanca. Would that be right? Like, this is, because the last line of that is something like, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship. So maybe it's sort of like a double reversal of like calling back to like an early movie just by, you know, with time fuckery and
yeah,
sort of referring to early cinema or something. How incredible. Okay, I'm totally going to have to, I mean, there are a whole lot of Nolan films I really need to watch, and that's one of them. So
yeah,
I will definitely get to that one. But I love that whole point as well. I think looking to the past is really, you know, in some ways valuable to, to study, to learn from, to, you know, notice patterns, notice recurrences, particularly artistically, you know, to learn from artists who've come before you, and I mean, whole video like influence and so on. I think that's like really valuable as an artist, but at the same time to kind of glamorize the past is so stifling. There's this idea in literary criticism called like the anxiety of influence, which has always really interested me. It's like this, say if you're a writer and you're so hyper aware of who your influences are and who's come before you and who's written stuff that you are completely incapable of creating anything original because you're either making pastiches of someone that you're influenced by, or you're so resistant to being influenced by anyone that everything you make is still dictated by the artists who you're trying not to mimic. You're just doing the reverse of what they're doing.
Yeah.
I think, so artistically that's interesting. But yeah, as you say, I mean, politically it's really relevant as well. It's interesting, I've often heard it described, like the difference between, say, like liberalism versus conservatism is that conservatives believe the world is getting worse, and like liberalism believes that the world is getting better. So, you know, conservatives want to like conserve things as they are, and liberalism wants to change things with the assumption that change will make things better. Whereas it almost feels like, you know, those old distinctions are really, you know, breaking down in a way. I think you've got, on the one hand, you've got, you know, people in power who are like, things are great and they're getting better, and then you've got another school of people who just sort of have this completely sort of misappropriated idea of like what the past was, and that we need to like go backwards. And I feel like all the old political divides and distinctions are kind of getting so blurred and kind of broken, and the wheel, you know, keeps shifting so much that it's hard to make any kind of sort of clear political, you know, you have someone from like 10 years ago whose political position might have never changed, but the landscape around them has changed so much that their position is different. But yeah, as you say, I think romanticizing the past is a very, very bad place to start.
Yeah. And it's funny you mentioned that, you know. So my question to you is, have you ever scrapped a video?
Oh. Yes, sort of. I have a doc, and I keep a whole list of video ideas in it. And every now and then I'll pick one to sort of, and recently I've been sort of working on one. In the end I put aside. I think the thing is, with a video, you really need, like a central, like some kind of, like a hot take, I guess.
Yeah.
You need something kind of original, and that can be maybe condensed to a sentence and is like a strongly held opinion. And with a few video ideas I've begun working on them, and the concepts I really like, and there are ideas to explore and particular thinkers to pull on, but there's not really a hot take. I don't really have anything to say about it beyond just this thing exists. And someday I might find a way to make a video that can, you know, accommodate not having a hot take. But for now, I have put a few video ideas, not like thrown them away, but I've definitely put them aside until I can come back to them and be like, oh, this is the hot take that I have, or this is the central idea that I really want to unpick.
Okay, very interesting. What is your favorite movie ever?
Oh my gosh. That's really tricky. This year I watched a whole lot of David Lynch films after he died, and I watched Fire Walk With Me for the first time, which is the Twin Peaks film, and I just like haven't been able to stop thinking about it, and I loved it so much. And so it sort of feels weird to like say a film that I've seen quite recently is my favorite, but I guess it's sort of like top of my mind, and I just keep coming back to it and being like, to me it's like when it comes to films, it's like if you can't quite identify why it's so brilliant, then you're like, that's a forever film, that's a favorite film, because it'll just constantly keep you interested. You just have to keep thinking about why was it so incredible. And that was one. I was like, how does David Lynch know what it feels like to be a teenage girl? I don't know how he did it, but it was really incredible.
My favorite movie, I don't know, have you heard of Tron Legacy?
No, I haven't.
That's my favorite movie. It's an incredible movie, man. Daft Punk, they did the soundtrack to that, and just that movie to me, like, it changed the way that I thought about reality, about human potential, and it just rewired my brain. You know, people. It's so funny when I hear like, oh, this thing, and this event, and this year it has rewired the way I think. No, this movie legitimately did that to me. And, you know, Tron Ares coming out, and, you know, in a month from now, I'm just interested because it's so funny because that when the Tron Legacy came out, right, you know, there wasn't really that much fanfare outside of like the hardcore fan base. So, like, people heard of it, people liked it, but it wasn't like a cultural movement. But over time, you know, again, with video essays and YouTube and social media become more of a thing, right? Because Tron Legacy dropped in 2010, right? This is smack dab in the beginning era of the major social media. Like, Facebook was the same in 2010. 2025 is TikTok and it's Instagram, it's Twitter, all these other things. But I'm very interested to see how, again, Tron Ares, because that movie's being, again, scored by Nine Inch Nails, you know. I love them, so that's gonna be dope.
Fantastic. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And just, man, just there's certain scenes, like, I'm gonna spoil it for you, but there's a, in beginning scene, the literal Disney logo is literally lit up in the blue colors of Tron Legacy. It's the dopest intro to, like a company intro I've ever seen in my life, and I'll stand on that. There's not one been better. Maybe Tron Ares that'll surpass that because it's red now instead of blue. And then there's a particular scene where it's actually the first 15 minutes of this movie can be a movie in and of itself, right? A lot of the people that were in that movie, like the cinematography and the editors and all that stuff, they were from David Fincher, right? Right? So it has that David Fincher type of look, which I love, by the way. And there's a transition that is maybe the smoothest transition of any film I've ever seen. So the way the movie starts is that there's these bunch of TVs, right? It's static room, bunch of TVs. And it's closing on this one TV. It's talking about how Kevin Flynn, he's like the Luke Skywalker of this universe. He's disappeared, right? He's disappeared. No one knows where he is. And Alan Bradley, he's like the Obi-Wan of this franchise. He takes over this company called Encom. Like, Encom is like Apple and Windows combined. You know what I'm saying? And they made this game called Tron and Space Paranoids, right? So the plot of the first movie is that there's like this guy, like this, you know, Dillinger, I think, I forgot the name, Dillinger, right? The first movie, he took credit for those games that he didn't obviously make, right? And his stock blew up. Their stock surpassed Encom stock and all that stuff. He gets caught, you know, Kevin Flynn gets sucked into the grid, and now he has a new perspective on things, and now he's been trying to build his own version of Utopia, right? So in Tron Legacy, he makes this clone called Clue, right? And Clue does a coup against Kevin Flynn, you know, because the way Clue was kind of programmed, it's like he wants to make the perfect system, right? And these ISOs they manifested out of nowhere, you know? To Clue, those were an imperfection, so they were genocided, right? There's this thing called the Purge, right? And I'm getting off track here. So young Sam Flynn, right? He hears this news, and he's devastated, right? And he doesn't want to talk to anybody, and his grandparents are taking care of him now, and he's right. And then he kind of runs out of the house, gets on this bike on this sort of beachside road, right? And then this transition starts. I think the actual track name that's playing music track is called "The Son of Flynn." It does this wicked transition, and this Ducati bike, and it's Sam Flynn all grown up, and he's weaving and through traffic, and the police are kind of after him, and then it transitions into, again, another crazy transition is him, again, where he's at the top of Encom's building. He pulls this prank every year, because Encom has gone away from what they were. You know, Encom was sort of like looked at as like the people's champ. Now they're all about the money and the stocks and the iOS and all that stuff. Sounds familiar, you know? Amazon, Apple, right? They kind of, you know what I'm saying? And he tried to get away from police, and then, you know, the plot of the movie happens. But the thing about art that I find so fascinating is art affects people differently. You know, something that may not be as artistic might be the blueprint for how somebody does something, right? I look at something like Real Steel. Have you watched Real Steel?
No.
So Sir Hugh Jackman, he's like this retired boxer, and this is a world where robots are boxing, like actual robots are boxing, right? And the way that movie also, again, that movie sort of changed my perspective of like how CGI can look, how Tenet sort of changed my perspective on how the movie experience and worked, and I think also I would say The Green Knight, that sort of changed my perspective on atmosphere and tone in the movie, right? So, you know, and then on the flip side of that, I mean, I look at a movie like, you know, weirdly, I look at a movie like Vertigo by Hitchcock, and it's so funny, man. Like, my dad wanted to watch this movie, so we all watched it as a family. It's like, this is back when I was living in Caledon. And we watched the movie, and I hated the movie. I did not know what was going on. I didn't like how slow it was. But for some reason, not even kidding, a couple weeks later, I discovered Lana Del Rey. And her aesthetic was a lot like the aesthetic in Vertigo, right? And when I made that connection, my appreciation for Vertigo just skyrocketed, right? Mm-hmm. So I rewatched it. And I loved them. Okay, this is my type of thing. So, I mean, yeah.
That's incredible. That's so interesting, eh? It's like, yeah, one artist can totally influence how you see something else. So, I love that about cinema as well. You know, you'll see a movie and you'll be like, oh, I totally understand how, like, like atmosphere works, or like how it can be used. Often it's not in films you expect either. Often it kind of catches you off guard. I find horrors really like that for me. You know, like super, super low budget horror often sits much more close to like weird avant-garde art house movies than like your standard mid-budget movie would. You know, there's something really kind of boundary pushing or unusual about really low budget films where filmmakers are forced to kind of make tight decisions or do weird stuff. Or even like, you know, you think of like Jaws, the fact that the shark isn't in the movie until toward the end was just purely a technical decision because the shark kept breaking.
Yeah.
It's like you end up in these situations where you'll get, you know, directors working under particular kinds of constraints, or particular influences, particular like schools of filmmaking, and you just end up with these kind of really wonderful, unusual situations. But I love that with the link between Lana Del Rey and Vertigo. I never picked up on that, but that's, now you say that, I'm like, oh yeah, I can totally see that. And often it takes an artist to kind of, like a really good artist you really click with, to kind of teach you how to see the world. There's I love Oscar Wilde, and he has this essay where he writes all about this, and he's basically like, no one understood how to see London fog until artists started putting it in their paintings.
Yeah.
And before that, no one had noticed that there was fog in London, and no one really cared about it. But as soon as artists who painted London began painting in the fog, everyone began noticing, you know, the fact that there was fog in London, and suddenly it became a really important part of like the city's identity. And I think that goes for so much. Often it'll take, you know, someone like Lana Del Rey to really notice Americana and kind of glamorize it for people to realize what Americana even is, or to make the connection between, I don't know, gas stations and carnivals and cars and whatever else is that she's kind of fusing into her aesthetic. I think the best directors will always do that.
Yeah, for sure. What is your favorite book you ever read?
Ooh, that's so tricky. Oh my gosh. My favorite, I think, sort of like turning around and looking over at my bookcase. My favorite book changes a lot. I'll always read something and it'll massively kind of influence me. Like at the start of this year, I read, a whole lot of, late last year I was reading like a whole lot of like romantic poems and they like from like William Blake and so on, and that like massively influenced me.
Yeah.
I think though the most important book I read, it's not a novel, but I read the Iliad in high school, and that sparked my interest in classics and obviously Greek myth, and I still think it's probably like the best thing I've ever read, even though it's technically a poem. So I think that's still my favorite.
Wow, that's a good answer. The one book for me that really gets me going anytime I read it, bro. More Than This by Patrick Ness. You heard of Patrick Ness?
Oh my gosh, I read. He wrote The Knife of Never Letting Go, didn't he?
I think so. Yeah.
It was like a trilogy, and I remember I read the first one and really loved it. For some reason, I never read the others, but I'm familiar with them. Patrick Ness.
More Than This, bro. That book is incredible. Like, it tackles so many issues. It tackles, homophobia, dystopia, post-apocalyptic, technology, racism, abuse, trauma, PTSD. It deals with everything, and the ending, bro. The ending hits you like a truck. I don't want to spoil it for you because, man, the book's an absolute ride. I wish they adapted to like a full-on like movie, because I really feel like, man, like sometimes it takes a movie for a book to be appreciated, and I think it's one of those things. Also, I would add this trilogy of books, but there's one book I think is the best book I had. Is the whole trilogy. It's called Foundry Side by Robert Jackson Bennett. I don't know if you heard of that book. But that book,
I just had someone yesterday recommend Robert Jackson Bennett to me. It was like, he's an amazing author.
Yeah, he's the best author right now, man. He's that guy, man. Like the way that he can just take two separate things and like create like an image, or like not even an image. He could take these two separate things, mash them together, and they still make sense. Not a lot of that's a hard thing to do, man. Right? And just again, like I honestly think that should be your next video. I'm not even kidding. Like, you read that book, like, because it talks about a lot of things, but it's probably the best critique against capitalism in a fantasy book ever. It is staunchly anti-capitalist, and it's incredible, right? Like, it's like Mission Impossible meets like steampunk, high art, sort of high concept fantasy. Is incredible, and that's the book that kind of made me fall in love with fantasy, because I love the fantasy aesthetic and the cloaked women. I love all that, but that book really got me sold on the whole concept of fantasy. And I mean, not a lot of authors can do that to me. So I mean, special shout out to him.
Totally, that's like, okay, that's so interesting. That's second recommendation for that book, so I'm clearly gonna have to read it. I love. I feel like often it's sci-fi that does, I don't know, political critiques or capitalist critiques, or and fantasy often kind of can just not interrogate stuff as deeply. So that's really cool to get a recommendation of something that really kind of uses it as a chance to dig into capitalism and monarchy, I would assume, as well. Maybe a criticism of monarchy.
Yeah. Okay. Do you watch TV? The TV shows and stuff? I'm assuming. So
I'm actually really bad at watching TV, to be honest. I've seen some. I'm not a super regular TV watcher.
What's the TV show that like you can just put on any time, you'll just enjoy it?
Oh, I am the biggest fan of Succession. I love that show so much.
Yeah.
When it was coming out, the final season was coming out. I think it was last year. It dropped after I finished work, and my coworker and I would like buy some hot chips and would sit on the floor and would watch it immediately after our shift ended, because we were so obsessed with it. I love that show, and I haven't done a full rewatch of it. I've just gone back and rewatched my favorite episodes, so I'm kind of saving it as a bit of a treat to really go back and enjoy again.
Man, my favorite show, like, it changes all the time, right? There's the usuals, Breaking Bad, Sopranos. Man, I love Stranger Things, but I haven't seen the last season gonna come out in a couple months, so I can't really sort of make that full assessment. But I'm gonna go with, man, I don't know if you've heard of this show. Have you heard of White Collar?
No, I haven't.
Go watch that show. That show's brilliant. Like, especially the first couple seasons. Forgot the guy. I think Matt Boner. I think that's his name. The guy who looks like Henry Cavill. He's the lead. He's the lead. I mean, the way, like, the one thing again, that, and also I've thrown Dexter. I've been watching a lot of Dexter recently. And man, the first couple seasons of that show, that show is incredible too. One thing I really like is that, you know, they don't leave certain threads unanswered. You know, I love ambiguity. I love sort of ambiguity and interpretation. But there's been just certain shows recently. I'm like, you know, they're leaving literal plot threads. And I'm looking at you, Wednesday season 2. You know, it's not as bad as people say it is. But man, there's certain characters that just disappear for full seasons. We don't even know what they're doing. We don't even know what they are. And these are like important characters, right? So one thing I love about these other shows is that everybody gets to play on the same field. You know, everybody has their moment to shine, and I love that. Right? Another show I really love. It's generic. I love Seinfeld. Like, that show's fun. It's fucking hilarious, man.
Yeah,
King of Queens is underrated too. Kevin James. I know he's kind of a joke now, but man, he was so funny, man. Back in the day. Another show. Atlanta's amazing too. Shout out to Donald Glover, man. That show's.
Oh, I love Atlanta. Yeah, that was great.
Another show I really love. Tron Uprising. It's not live action, but Tron Uprising. That was the show for me during the pandemic. Yeah. Detention Air, like cartoon, like bro, that like. Do you watch cartoons?
Not many, no.
Okay. Teen Titans, like, that show's goated for sure.
Oh yeah.
Barnyard, Nickelodeon Barnyard. That was funny.
No, Barnyard. Gosh, interesting.
Yeah, I have a I like to try new things. I'm really loving Tulsa King, Sylvester Stallone show. Yeah, it's generic, but man, just his presence alone, like, anytime Sly is in something, I want to watch. You know, my dad, like, that's like, you know, my dad loved watching Sylvester Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'm the same, and those guys for me, again, the same thing. You know, like, those guys kind of push the limits of what an action star can do, and I always love them for that. It's another show I really love. I forgot the name. Another show. Yes, Sidekicks cartoon.
Yeah.
It's not for everybody. It didn't even run that long, but if you like Total Drama Island, like, you'll love that show. I'll just say that. Sure, it's kind of an acquired taste because it's for a younger audience, you know. But if you get on that show, like, you understand why that show still has a cult following. Like, it's so funny. Like, I searched that show up the other day, and I'm shocked the amount of posts I saw about it. I'm like, people still think about that show? That's cool.
People are still, like, tuning in. And neat. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, for sure. Who is the most famous person to say, man, I love your work, I like your work? That can be on YouTube or outside of that.
Oh, I don't think I've ever really met anyone super famous, to be honest.
Okay.
I don't think I've even had, at least not that I've noticed, I don't think I've had, like, especially major, like, YouTubers or anything comment on my videos that I can think of. I've seen famous people in, like, the distance, but
like who?
Again, yeah, like, living in New Zealand and, you know, the film industry and so on, you sort of see lots of celebrities around, but you kind of don't talk to them, so.
Okay.
But no, I don't think I've had anyone particularly famous ever, like, acknowledge my work on my YouTube channel.
Okay. Interesting. Who's your celebrity crush growing up or now? I don't know if you're in a relationship with anybody like that or.
No. That's a tricky one. Oh my gosh. I think When I was younger, I mean, I was like a supernatural teenager. I was really into that show.
Yeah,
So I'm
cool.
sure I probably had crushes on most of the major cast members like through my teen years.
Yes.
As did all my friends. We used to just like watch that show like at school, like on our phones under the desks. We were so obsessed with it to like an embarrassing degree. And I've never been back and rewatched it since. I kind of don't think that I could. I think it ended up like 14 seasons or something, so I definitely never finished it.
For me, like, there's so many like beautiful women, but Haley Steinfeld, like that, man, she's special. That's all I gotta say.
Oh, she's awesome. Yeah.
Millie Bobby Brown, I mentioned her again. She's gorgeous. Margot Robbie, my gosh. My first real crush I had on someone was Lana Del Rey, and that lasted longer than like all of them. Like, I was daydreaming about it in school, bro. I was telling people, you guys gotta check this out, and my friends look at me like I was crazy. I'm like,
you're like, you guys don't get it. You don't get the visions.
you know? Yes, that's it. There's YouTubers I think they're like absolute like, beautiful people like Jordan Theresa. Have you heard of Jordan Theresa?
Oh, I used to be such. I mean, I still love her videos, but I used to watch them all the time. She's wonderful. She's so smart as well. Oh my gosh, she's like.
Bro, I've been trying to get her on here, bro. I really think, that would be crazy. But she's beautiful.
Give it such a good interview. Should be so interesting.
Yeah. Another one. Chat's cool.
Yeah.
There's this woman, like there's this goth woman from like Jersey, and she sort of looks like Anya Taylor-Joy. Emma something, I forgot her name. She's beautiful too. There's this music YouTuber, Cameron Susan. She's gorgeous. She's a black YouTuber. She talks about like R&B and hip hop and pop, and that's another interview I want to do at some point. Sophie Thatcher, she's not a YouTuber. Sophie Thatcher's beautiful, man. My brother introduced me to her, which is funny.
She's incredible.
It's funny. Mikey Madison's cool. Amelia Clark, bro, I had an obsession with her back in the day. She's still beautiful, but back then, bro, blonde hair, Daenerys, bro, that was
the Game of Thrones days.
That was big. Okay, so Kalani, man, R&B artist, she's gorgeous, still is, but man, do you read comic books?
Oh my gosh, I wish I did more. I've sort of been getting into graphic novels a little more recently, and kind of some old, picking up some old kind of retro comics and so on.
Yeah.
Because I love drawing and I love writing. So I'm like, I can't believe I never got into comics as a kid.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of trying to catch up a little bit now, but I'm still pretty in the dark.
Okay. Sidetrack, but your voice is gorgeous, man. I'll just say that.
Gosh, thank you so much. I get people asking about I think people are a bit confused by New Zealand accent, so I do get people asking about where I'm from a lot, but yeah.
Obviously, so we sort of live in a world where, people just hopping on every type of trend, fashion trend and stuff. What's your fashion style? Is it goth? Is it casual? What is it?
I wish I had the guts to be goth. I think goths are so cool. I went through my big kind of dark academia phase when I was at uni. That was my thing. So I had, like all the kind of, tweed pants and got all, collared shirts and all this stuff. I kind of don't do that anymore. I'm much more, I love just like blue jeans and a white t-shirt. I feel like I go much more casual now. I have a bunch of leather jackets that I love.
Okay.
I always go for just like a few, like a black turtleneck or just a few real basic staples.
Okay.
And I try and get like less clothes and get like really nice kind of quality stuff. Again, just like vintage leather or vintage denim. I am obsessed with.
Okay.
Yeah, so I feel like that's kind of what I trend towards now, and it feels like it's sort of sustainable. It's like you can buy something and you know that you're going to be wearing it for like 5 years because it's just real good quality fabric, nicely made.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. So what music you're listening to right now?
Ooh. I've always wished that I had like better music taste than I do. It's so bad. Lately, I'm gonna have to like pull up my phone and see what I've been listening to. I got into Ethel Cain last year, and I really like her stuff.
Okay.
Again, I was super into Lana as a teenager, so I feel like there's a kind of a, for both of them, they're just such world builders, and they kind of create an atmosphere and create I don't want to say character, but like a persona, like an artistic persona that you can really lose yourself in. I was very sad that Ethel Cain left Tumblr because I used to follow her on there, and she posted just like creepy photos of smokestacks and that kind of thing, and I was really it was really into her vibe.
Yeah, bro. I saw that. I'm like, oh my gosh. I just, like the saying always goes, like, always separate the art from the artist. But man, some artists they just make it so hard to do that, man. It's obviously you may have heard of this person, man. My favorite artist, man. My favorite artist, bro, back in the day was like Chris Brown. Like,
oh yeah, oh no, yeah.
Yeah, he was again like. Say what you again, musically speaking, during that time he was like untouchable, right? Then it's kind of changed, Daft Punk. They're still like my favorite electronic music group ever. Artist period, they're incredible. My favorite artist period, even though again, the mental health and just all that stuff, it's Kanye. Like, I think his music really spoke to me at a time where like I didn't know what I was gonna do. And this one album that he did, so funny that this was like my full introduction to hip, because here's the thing, I always liked hip hop. There's always songs, everybody loved Drake and Kendrick and Cole and all that stuff, but like my first full introduction was Yeezus. It's 2016.
Oh yeah.
That album, still to this day, for me is the best album ever, just because, like, for two reasons. The first reason is like the way that he was sort of like, because people forget that album he made was a response to the fashion industry essentially saying, you're cool, but like what you're doing is not, like, we don't like that. They kind of shunned him. They kind of sort of they kind of shunned him in a way. They kind of dismissed what he was doing, right? So that's how, like, he came from like a fashion event. He's showcasing his stuff to like all these like, high art people and people in the art business and stuff in fashion industry. They kind of like, they kind of just dismissed him. It's okay. You're gonna do that. Okay, I'll go. Then he literally hit up Daft Punk, right? Because they was already in the studio in France. He goes into their studio and say, let's. He literally made it right on spot, black skinhead, and I'm a god. And I find that so interesting, right?
Oh yeah.
Because the original title Yeezus was called "Thank God for Drugs," and it's again the OG album that again because the way that he does music is so, again, he's very perfectionist, right? And he was never gonna release the album in that state, but if he did, there's a lot of songs. You know what I'm saying? Like, he was working with The Weeknd, he was working with Lizzie Banks. This was before she kind of fell off the wagon. And just that whole time creatively, to me that is his creative peak during that time. 2010 to like 2018, that was his creative peak. Everything after that was just very scattershot, and it sort of reflected in the music, and also really reflected in sort of his mental state. And I don't know if publicly that the public is ever going to like him ever again. And because it felt like after Donda, it felt cool to be a Kanye fan again. It felt cool, like, people like, hey man, like, I'm listening to Donda. Hey, I'm listening to that too. That's cool. Like, it felt really cool seeing that. And then he kind of just, again, he burned it all away in 2 weeks. in September, October, and it's just like, nothing's been the same since then.
Oh yeah.
You know, every couple of months he's ranting on Twitter about stuff that I'm like, oh, dog, bro, come on, man. And it's just like, it's sad. And it's like, I'm looking at people trying to, I understand, you know, people sort of coming out of the woodwork, say, hey, man, he was never good, yada, yada. I'm just like, man, shut up, man. Like,
oh yeah.
It's same thing, low-key, the same thing's happening to Lana Del Rey too, man. Like, Born to Die, like, that album to me, like, that changed the way I look at music too in a different way. Like, Born to Die and Yeezus were sort of trying to accomplish the same thing. So they're trying to sort of challenge and change the sort of zeitgeist in music and sort of popular culture in general. But they achieved it in different ways. You know what I'm saying? Kanye looked forward, Lana looked back. Right? And those two records, to me, those two records are always going to be I'm always going to be listening to those two records. Regardless of whatever thing they say or whatever thing they might do, hopefully they stay out of trouble, you know? But, yeah.
Totally. That's a really interesting comparison between the two, actually. I guess it's so tricky with Kanye, because you could almost, you know, you can make the case for him being one of the most important artists of the 21st century. But he's just kind of burned it all down. It's like, you know, how do you kind of deal with that? And, you know, that influence is still, you know, there, even though he's ranting on Twitter and you know, doing hate speech and all that. So it's so difficult. It's, you know, it's like, how are people going to deal with him like 50 years from now or 100 years from now? It's what do you do with an artist like that? He's kind of quite a fascinating case study in a way.
Yeah, it is. It really is. What's your favorite album 2025?
Ooh. I kind of feel like it's been a bit of a dud year for music, to be honest. I don't feel like I've been super excited about a lot of stuff coming out. I'm trying to think. I mean, I guess I just mentioned Ethel Cain. I really liked her recent album. That was good. I think my all-time favorite musician is called Joanna Newsom, and she was doing a residency. Well, I don't know if she's ever going to put out another album. It's been like 10 years, but she was doing a residency last year and has been sort of been like song leaks happening online. So that's sort of been my most exciting.
Okay. Interesting.
It's not even like an official release, but that's just been what I've been most excited about musically this year, is just listening to these live recordings of her music that hopefully one day will be an album. But honestly, yeah, that's been my biggest excitement.
Have you heard of Clips? Do you listen to hip hop?
Not really, no.
Okay, interesting. Wow. All right, so we're heading towards the end of the interview, and we're good. Every interview that I do, especially recently, I do this Q&A saying where I'm gonna give you two artists, or two people, or two franchises, or whatever, and you have to pick either or. The difference is you can't say both, and you can't say neither, right? So you've got to pick one, right? And on the flip side of that, if you want to sort of tell a reason or a story why you picked your choice, you're free to do so. Cool with that?
Awesome.
Huh?
I feel like this is going to be embarrassing for me because I'm really, really bad on pop culture. So
okay, I try to.
Based on names, maybe.
I can adjust. Okay, let's go. Socrates or Plato?
What was that?
Socrates or Plato?
I will go Plato.
Okay. New Zealand or Australia?
I gotta be New Zealand.
Okay. Chicago or Toronto as cities?
Oh. I'll go Toronto.
Okay. Ronaldo or Messi?
Honestly, know so little about either, but I'll go Messi, I think.
Okay. All right. Supernatural or Succession?
Oh, Succession all the way. Love that show. I feel
Okay.
like Supernatural has got the nostalgia, but
Okay.
no, I honestly haven't seen it in so many years, and it probably like shocked me
Okay.
how like different it is from what I remember.
Okay. Nickelback or Imagine Dragons?
Oh my gosh. I met someone whose favorite ever band was Imagine Dragons, and I was like, such a strange band to have as your favorite in the world.
They got some bangers though. Back in the day, like Radioactive was the thing for me, man. But yeah, I'm with you on that.
That's true. That's true. I might go Nickelback though.
Okay. Okay. Nirvana or Linkin Park?
Ooh, Nirvana.
Okay. Okay. Beyonce or Prince?
Oh my gosh. I've been getting into Prince more recently. I feel like he's what I've been listening to more. I mean, obviously Beyonce I think has been more like important to me in terms of just listening to her as a teenager, but I'm really liking Prince. I might go for Prince.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Tupac or Biggie?
Oh my gosh. I'll go Biggie.
Okay. Okay. DMX or Jadakiss?
Either at all. I guess I'll have to pick Jadakiss, I think.
Okay. 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 Michael Jackson or Frank Sinatra?
Ooh. I might go Michael Jackson, I think, just purely because, I remember like exactly where I was standing when I found out he died, and just in terms of the massive influence of his music, even on like my childhood, I think, yeah. I mean, love Frank Sinatra, but
Okay. 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 Millie Bobby Brown or Megan Fox?
I feel like Millie Bobby Brown's probably more. I've seen her in more stuff, I think. I like her as well. I think she's really cool.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Jennifer Connelly or Margaret Qualley?
Oh my gosh. I have so much nostalgia for like Jennifer Connelly films. I think there are a few like childhood films that she was in that I used to watch. So just purely for nostalgia, I have to go with her.
Okay. Okay. Al Pacino or Rob De Niro?
Ooh, I will go. Yeah, that's tricky. I'm just going to go kind of random. I'll just go Robert De Niro, I think.
Okay.
Just purely because I think that's a more recent film. Like, I've seen him more recently in films.
Okay. Da Vinci or George Condo?
Ooh. Oh, interesting. I'll go Da Vinci.
Okay. Okay. Picasso or Galileo?
I will go Galileo.
Okay.
I think
Okay.
obviously both important, but maybe Galileo a little more so.
Okay. Interesting. Mozart or Bach? Whatever his name is.
Ooh. I will go Bach just because I feel like in terms of just early influence on absolutely everything, just how incredibly inventive he was. Not that Mozart wasn't, but
Okay.
I'll go Bach.
Okay. Interesting. Who's worse, Trump or Reagan?
Oh my gosh. I guess it's tricky because now we're currently still seeing the effects of Reagan's policies. So you're kind of getting a sense of how terrible he was for the long term, whereas Trump, it's like, it'll be 30 years before we really properly see the fallout of everything he's doing right now. But I might go Trump,
Okay.
just because I don't like it. So.
Okay. 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 Christopher Nolan or Stanley Kubrick?
tricky. I think I'll go Stanley Kubrick, because I do find often I just get like quite lost in Nolan films, to be honest.
Okay.
And who's Kubrick? Also Kubrick, I think I saw a few of them in high school when I was really getting into filmmaking in a big way, and they just sort of have just stuck with me in such a influential way. I think he's kind of, yeah, he's got the dream, you know? He was tapping into something that no one else was, he was like on a wavelength no one else was on.
Okay. Tarantino or Hitchcock?
I actually have such a soft spot for Tarantino, which makes me such a film bro, but I just love the way that he's so like intensely influenced by so many other eras of film. But then it feels kind of terrible to rank him above Hitchcock, so
okay.
I feel like just for the sake of not being a massive film bro, I'll say Hitchcock.
Okay. Margot Robbie or Nicole Kidman?
Go with the Aussie. Have to go with. Oh, they're both Aussies. I'll go with Nicole Kidman though.
Okay.
I think she's really cool.
Michelle Pfeiffer or Anne Hathaway?
I'm really loving the Anne Hathaway renaissance at the moment. I like that she's having her comeback and getting her flowers. I'm gonna go with Anne Hathaway.
Okay, interesting. Brie Larson or Rachel Zegler?
I actually don't know if I've ever seen... Oh, now I say that, I'm like, have I seen either of them in anything? I don't think I have. I love Rachel Zegler's energy, though. I think she's so kind of warm and lovely, and I hope that she eventually gets some love in the public spotlight. I think she really deserves it.
Yeah. Ariana Grande or Mariah Carey?
I have to go Ariana, just because, again, teenage years, she was everywhere.
Yeah.
Love that she's having her like little acting era at the moment. I hope she acts in more stuff. I think she was great in Wicked.
Okay. Crystal Castles or Clam Casino?
I don't really know either, so I'm just going to have to go for Crystal Castles, I think.
Okay. Charlie XCX or Ray?
Ooh, I do like Charlie XCX, and again, sort of been following her for a while, and it was great to see her have her moment with Brat.
Yeah.
And I'm sort of so interested to see what happens next now, like if she's going to do Brat 2.0 or kind of pivot again, or I reckon Charlie.
Okay. Marina and the Diamonds or St. Vincent?
My gosh. I think purely for like nostalgia, I'd go with Marina and the Diamonds. I remember that just being that one album that was absolutely everywhere for a few years, and it just, hearing her music just brings back so many very, very nostalgic memories. So I'll go with her.
Daft Punk or Aphex Twin?
I have a friend who's like massively into Aphex Twin, and he's a big like music lover, and I'll trust his judgment on that one.
Okay.
I'll go with Aphex Twin.
Okay. Boards of Canada or Autechre?
Oh, I don't know either. I'll go with the first one.
Okay. Flume or Kaytranada?
Oh, I'll go Flume. I had like a vague... I like a friend of a friend knew his manager, or there was some like early connection, I remember.
Whoa, what? That's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, just kind of random, but anyway.
Oh, damn, that's cool.
Since then I've always felt vaguely like... It's like 4 degrees of separation, but I'm still like, basically friends.
Okay. Okay. Lord or Matthew Starr?
With Lord, I honestly only really love that first album. I like the others, but I think it was that first album that was really impactful.
Okay.
But even so, it was like so impactful on me, like as a young teen, that I think I would still go for Lord, even though it's kind of just the one album that I really like.
Okay. Lana Del Rey or Billie Eilish?
It's gotta be Lana. Gotta be Lana every time. Okay. Not Billie, but again, just I think, yeah, Lana kind of. I learned a lot from her music in a way as a teenager.
Okay, interesting. Jordan Peele or Spike Lee?
Ooh, I really like Jordan Peele, and I love like Ian Peele and sort of that like comedy eye in horror. I think is like so interesting, and there's kind of a lot of crossover between the genres that I'm surprised hasn't done more. I think he's just so original and just so kind of ahead in his game. I really like him.
It might be a little bit of a sidetrack, but he's producing this movie, this like sports horror movie called Him, and it's starring Marlon Wayans. Have you heard of him or seen it anywhere?
No, my gosh.
Check the trailer out, man. It's something. It's something, man. I think you would really enjoy. I actually, low key, if you were to do like a movie review, I think that movie is interesting because there's gonna be a lot of discourse. You know, conspiracy people, they're gonna be going crazy over it. I know that.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I'll so check that out. That sounds really, really interesting.
Okay. Ryan Coogler or Steve McQueen, the director?
Oh, tricky. I do like Ryan Coogler. I think he's really young as well, right? Like,
yeah,
I think
pretty young. Yeah, for a director.
Yeah. Oh yeah, like pretty incredible to sort of climb the ladder that fast in terms of making pretty huge culturally important movies. I think that's incredible. I'll go Ryan Coogler.
Okay. Stranger Things or Game of Thrones?
So tricky because I love Game of Thrones, but I do feel like the last season and a half, although toward the end of the series it was definitely dragging a bit, it just brings the whole thing down in a way, which is really sad. Yeah. But then again, it's like we haven't seen the finale of Stranger Things, so that could also have a terrible ending. Yeah. That said, I guess Game of Thrones, it really felt like a proper TV show where like each season fed on from the last one, whereas Stranger Things, you can definitely tell they made the first season not planning to make a second one. Like it was just completely self-contained, and then since then all the seasons have been a little bit kind of scattershot, like a bit not bad, but just kind of a bit disjointed. So maybe for that reason I might go Game of Thrones.
Interesting. Okay. Arcade Fire or Green Day?
Oh gosh, I got Green Day, I think.
Okay. Alice Glass or Sushi and the Banshees?
Alice Glass.
Okay. Jay-Z or Nas?
I'll go Jay-Z, I think.
Okay. Ferrari or Lamborghini?
Only for F1 reasons, I'll go Ferrari.
Okay. Cookies or cupcakes?
Ooh. Cookies, just because I'm slightly better at making them than cupcakes. I feel like cupcakes is a bit more that can go wrong.
Okay. Second last one. Need for Speed or Forza?
Forza.
Okay. All right. Last one. Top Gear or the Grand Tour?
I have to go Clarkson. I have to go Top Gear, I think.
Okay. Bonus one. Last of Us or GTA?
Oh, man. The Last of Us.
Okay.
I think.
And second bonus one. Dave Chappelle or George Carlin?
Oh, interesting. Carlin.
Okay.
I'm not like a huge viewer of both, but I do like the little I've seen of George Carlin. I do really like.
Okay. Yeah, that's the end of the interview. Man,
Amazing.
that was great. You did great, and all that, man. I'm really honored. I didn't think you would say yes, and I sent that email. And I didn't think you were gonna respond, but you did, and we got this thing through, man. So.
Oh, it was such a pleasure talking to you, and thank you so much. It's such interesting questions. Oh my gosh, I feel like time flew by. That was incredible.
Yeah, for sure. This is what I look like, so you won't mind. Hi.
Awesome. Hey.
Hi. Yeah, it's great. Have a nice day. I'll let you know when I get this one up. If you don't mind me asking, but can you promote this on your channel? Whatever.
I'll see what I can do. I don't really do community posts, but I can always. I've got Instagram and so on that I can.
You have Instagram?
I do. It's sort of. I sometimes link it and I sometimes don't, but
Okay.
I have an Instagram somewhere.
All right. Have a nice one.
Amazing. Awesome. Thank you so much for interviewing me. This was great. Great talking to you.
You too. Bye. That is the end of this episode of Renegade Podcast. So we hope you guys enjoy the same way I enjoyed this one. Put this one together. Bye.